Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
We'll take you inside the cattle industry summer business meeting and explain why the work done there by beef producers is important to the success of the beef industry. Plus, see how John Deere hay equipment can help manage through the challenges of hay season.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello and welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kate Maher. Thanks for spending some time with us. We're coming to you from Reno, Nevada, the site of the 2022 Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting. This important event allows cattle producers and industry stakeholders to come together, discuss current issues, work on programs and initiatives, and set NCBA's policy priorities for the upcoming fiscal year. This is done through the efforts of grassroots beef producers who serve on various committees and subcommittees that meet this week to decide the best course of action to ensure the long-term success of the beef industry. And joining us now with more on this meeting is NCBA President Don Schiefelbein. Don, thanks for your time here. Why is this meeting here in Reno, Summer Business Meeting, so important to the direction of the beef industry?
Well, this is the meeting where all our policy gets approved and established. So this is where, if you will, the sausage gets made. So if you go through the meetings today, you'll see them discussing a myriad of issues, all facing our beef industry. And this is where they come out and say, this is the solution we're looking for. And as the grassroots process goes, majority rules, and this dictates how we're going to address that issue.
And you know, you and I have seen it from this side for a long time, but you hit the right word, and that's grassroots. And it's producers, it's farmers and ranchers from across the country in a room together, putting it all out on the table and making directions. Why is it so important to have those people face to face and here in those rooms making those conversations?
Well, better than that, I wish everybody could see for their own eyes what happens and how this thing unfolds, because it truly is producer A, producer B, discussing, debating, figuring out what really the policy ought to be. And as you said, the cards go up and the policy gets established, and there is no other way. So it is the grassroots process playing its way out.
You know, there's a lot of challenges facing our producers today, but there's also a lot of opportunities. What are you hearing from your fellow producers across the country?
Well, the good news is there's a lot of optimism for market prices. You don't have to go very far before you start hearing prices that they were not expecting to receive this year. So prices, I would say, would be the number one issue. And people are feeling good that beef demand remains strong. That's relating to calf prices. And finally, cow-calf producers are getting their fair share, at least partially, of that beef dollar.
So then what are some of the key policy issues that NCBA staff will be focusing on this fall?
Yeah, our big one right now is traceability. You know, we just went through this whole COVID-19 and saw how devastating a disease outbreak can be in America, and the reactionary way that our government can react to a disease outbreak. We want to make sure our ducks are all in a row. We're getting the best minds together in this industry to figure out, should something like a disease outbreak hit the beef cattle industry, that we are well prepared to make sure that we're doing everything possible to keep their operations safe.
So maybe talk us through a little bit of that process. I understand there is a group getting together right now to sort of establish to have some of those initial conversations. Talk about that whole process.
Well, and again, it's grassroots. So what we did is we asked all our state associations across the fruited plain, saying, who do you want within your state or organization to represent us on this key deal? And I tapped on Todd Wilkinson, who I have all the confidence in the world in, to kind of lead that charge. And he's getting all their input and saying, what does traceability need to look like? How do we make sure common sense prevails? And how do we make sure that it is producer driven and not government mandate driven? And to me, to do that, we want to get on the front end of this problem and make sure we're addressing it straight up.
I agree with you. If there's going to be anybody leading the charge on this, I want Todd Wilkinson in charge, for sure.
I absolutely do.
Yeah. You mentioned state cattlemen's associations nominating people for this working group. Maybe just give us a little bit of an update and overview of how NCBA works so closely and how those state cattlemen's associations are really key to our success.
Well, the strength of NCBA is our affiliates. And our affiliates are those state organizations across the United States who are a collection of microcosms, if you will, of producers in various regions, et cetera. And they are really the ones who are the groundswell that comes to these conventions, and they say, what is an interest or an area that we have concern with in our area, and how do we get the national voice to spotlight that issue and make sure we resolve that issue here in our local area. So it's a state national partnership, and to me, your national organization is only as strong as those state organizations.
So with everything at stake and all the issues on the table, why is it so important for people to be members of their State Cattlemen's Association and of NCBA?
Yeah, and the membership has to count. And as I've told many people traveling across this United States, even if you differ with your state organization or your NCBA on an issue, that doesn't mean you walk away from the fight. It means you gather in and you gather your friends and your neighbors and make sure your opinion is getting translated to NCBA, so collectively we come up with the best solution.
Well, thank you for your time, for your volunteer leadership time with NCBA, and yeah, let's all get in the room and gather up and do this thing, huh?
It's been my pleasure serving.
As Don said, every day the NCBA staff in both Washington, D.C. and Denver work on issues that matter to you as cattle producing families. And you can help in that fight for the industry's future by becoming a member. Just call 866-233-3872 or visit the website ncba.org. I'm joined now by Ethan Lane, Vice President of Government Affairs at the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. Ethan, thanks for joining us. We're here at the Summer Business Meeting in Reno. How does what happened here and the policy that gets set here impact the work that you and your staff do every day in Washington, D.C.?
Well, this really is ground zero for formulating our policy agenda in Washington. This is where all of our affiliates from across the country come with their best ideas, their concerns, updates to things we've already been working on, and we incorporate all of those over the next couple days into our policy book in Washington, D.C. And that forms the marching orders for your team in Washington to make sure they're implementing those wishes across all of the different policy areas that we work on in Washington every day.
So once again, it's time to talk Farm Bill. Can you give us an update on where we're at in that process?
Well, we're sort of slowly starting that process. And if you talk to leadership up on Capitol Hill, they'll tell you that, gosh, by this time in the Farm Bill process, last time we were much further along and had done 100 or more field hearings and oversight hearings. We're just starting that process now, starting to take a look at what programs have worked, what programs need some changes or some tweaks, and what need to be done away with. And we're doing that process internally here at NCBA as well. We're going to focus a lot this week here in Reno on the Farm Bill and looking at some of those risk management programs that have really grown in popularity. Things like LRP were just not well used the last time we did a Farm Bill. Now they're extremely popular. So we're going to need to figure out how to deal with programs like that, how to fine tune some others. And we're going to need to do that in a funding environment for this Farm Bill that's going to be pretty flat. There's not going to be a lot of additional resources available, and there's a lot of different segments of agriculture that need help. So we're going to really need to be on our game and listening carefully to our producers to make sure we ask for the right things in that Farm Bill and don't get kind of dragged down rabbit holes during that process.
Well, we're really grateful that you and your team are there making sure that beef producers are trying to get a piece of that very small pie that's getting ready to go around. And midterm elections are going to be important to our producers. Give us a scope on where we lie on that.
Well, this is going to be a pretty impactful election cycle. No matter what side of the aisle you're on, no matter which news channel you happen to watch, we are going to see some substantial changes in Washington. And that's not unusual for a midterm where one party's in control of the different branches of government. Americans just like to see a little change sometimes when that happens. So we're certainly expecting to see at least a change in leadership in the House of Representatives. That's fairly certain at this point, just based on the math in those districts. They only need to pick up 5 seats, and I think most folks are pretty comfortable that they're going to pick up more than that. That's going to mean a little change in direction in the House of Representatives. The Senate is still in play. We don't know whether or not that's going to switch or not, but that narrow margin means really at the end of the day, it doesn't matter which party's in control of the Senate because, either side, as we've seen with Joe Manchin and people like that over the last couple of years, either side can disrupt that process pretty easily. So we're going to be pretty focused on the House. And if we do see that change, G.T. Thompson will likely be the new chairman of the Agriculture Committee. He's a great friend of NCBA, a great friend of cattle producers. And we look forward to working with him as we move into this Farm Bill season and see what we can get done.
It also seems to me that the work that you do across all parties and all beef producers benefit from it. How can producers help support those efforts in Washington for you?
This is a team effort. All we are in Washington is the conduit of our producers' needs and wishes and fears in Washington, D.C. So keeping those lines of communication open, calling us, talking to your members of Congress, echoing that message at your state cattlemen's meeting or your county cattlemen's meeting, that's the most important job cattle producers have in playing a role in this process. That's how we make sure we're getting it right. That's how we make sure we're spending our time and our resources effectively on behalf of producers. So all we ask of our producers is show up. Voice your concerns, be part of that process, and never let one of your members of Congress walk by you at a county fair without grabbing them by the arm and telling them what you think.
Yeah, well, I always appreciate your time, all the work that you all do, and being, I've seen this firsthand, being accessible to all our beef producers out there. Thanks for your time, Ethan.
Thank you.
This summer business meeting is one of two important events on the beef industry calendar. The other, of course, is the Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA trade show. And it's not too early to start making plans to attend, February 1st through the 3rd in New Orleans, Louisiana. You can find out all the details at the website convention.ncba.org. Up next on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll discuss some of the issues facing public lands ranchers and what NCBA is doing to help protect them. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Nasalgen 3 is a new 3-way intranasal BRD vaccine that offers young calves unrivaled protection against devastating respiratory diseases, including IBR, BRSV, and PI3. And it has a unique blue shadow, so there's no second guessing which animals have been vaccinated. To up your protection, choose new Nasalgen 3 PMH, the first and only 5-way intranasal vaccine on the market. Talk to your veterinarian and visit nasalgen.com to learn more.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, CEO of MyPillow. Retailers, shopping channels, and now even banks have tried to cancel myself and MyPillow. Well, during these times, your support has meant everything to us. So my employees and I want to personally thank each and every one of you by passing the savings directly on to you. We're selling the best products ever for the best prices ever. For example, we have my standard size MyPillow, regularly $69.98, now only $19.98 with your promo code. Or you can get custom fit with my premium queen size MyPillows, regularly $79.98, now just $29.98. Or my king size, regular $89.98, now just $34.98. So go to mypillow.com now and use the promo code on your screen or call the 1-800 number below to receive this exclusive offer. If you do it right now, I'm going to include a free gift with your purchase. Thank you and God bless.
Welcome back. We're coming to you from the Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting in Reno, Nevada. And joining me now is Sigrid Johannes, who is the Associate Director of the Public Lands Council and NCBA Natural Resources. Sigrid, thanks for joining us today. Let's start by having you tell us, why are Public Lands Council issues so important really to the beef industry as a whole, whether you are raising cattle in Montana or Georgia?
That's a great question, Kate. Public lands issues matter to the entire industry, even private landowners, because a lot of the issues, particularly natural resource and ecology related issues that hit private landowners eventually, start on public lands. When you're operating on BLM or Forest Service permits, all of the extra red tape, all of the extra hoops in many cases that comes with, requires us to be a step ahead of a lot of the issues, again, especially environmental issues, that later trickle down and start to impact or bring extra scrutiny to private landowners. Another reason is because public lands are vital for the economic sustainability of beef production, not just in the West, but across the country. Many producers, their cattle, once they get to the feeding stage, have eventually at some point spent time grazing on Western lands, and in most cases, those are public lands. So it's a crucial building block for the rest of the supply chain, but it's also, again, a real test case and a real breeding ground for a lot of the sort of ahead of the curve issues that NCBA later works on in other regions.
Yeah, it's a big industry we all live in, and it's fun to see how we all play a part and how it all impacts us too. Sigrid, a lot of the country is dealing with drought conditions right now, which is fuel for wildfires. What is PLC doing on this? I know you guys work a lot to educate about the benefits of grazing to control wildfires.
Absolutely. Well, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, sadly, even here in Reno, I'm looking around and seeing a lot of faces from our Western ranches that are not here because folks have too much to do at home. The drought is critical right now, and a lot of that plays into wildfire conditions as well. At the Public Lands Council, we have been going into every room in Washington and bringing the same message, which is grazing is good. And that's the same message that we echo at NCBA. Grazing is good, and grazing is a nimble, flexible, adaptable management tool that can thin out those fuels that end up creating these catastrophic wildfire conditions. And it's a lot lower impact on the environment than some of the other techniques that are used to address that risk. So when people sort of look around and scratch their heads and say, what on earth can we do about this wildfire crisis? We're the first ones to say, look, there's a tool out there that is very efficient and also creates a great product that people have been using for decades, for centuries even. So it's time to leverage that and put that to work, not only on federal lands, but also on private lands.
Yeah, wildfire control and food all in one neat package.
Exactly.
There's been some recent regulation and even a court decision with the Endangered Species Act recently. I know PLC works a lot on this. Can you give us an update, please?
Sure thing. There's a lot of things happening in the ESA space this summer. The court decision that came out of the district court in the Northern District of California vacated, meaning it just sort of repealed overnight, 3 rules that were finalized under the Trump administration dealing with the ESA. And those were rules that NCBA and PLC pushed for pretty hard because they made for a more sensible, common sense, efficient process. We are always looking on the regulatory side to streamline all of the bureaucratic processes that end up creating huge delays and uncertainty for producers no matter where you are in the country. So we were very disappointed to see that court decision. We are sort of evaluating our next move and seeing where we'll be able to engage in the future with the Biden administration. But there's another rulemaking currently open right now regarding the use of 10J, which is a part of the ESA that deals with non-essential experimental wildlife populations. So what that means is under the current rule, the proposed rule that the Fish and Wildlife Service has put out, you would be able to introduce one of these populations of a listed species in areas outside of their historic range. That could mean anything from, polar bears in Florida to, gray wolves anywhere in the country. And that's remarkably concerning, obviously, for NCBA and for PLC. It doesn't make ecological sense. It doesn't make sense for the best interests of the species. So we thoroughly encourage people to log on and submit their own comments. NCBA is working on comments, but if folks want to access that comment portal, they can go to the website or publiclandscouncil.org.
Sigrid, thanks for the information and especially for all you do for our federal lands ranchers. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Kate.
For more information on the issues that impact federal lands and the ranchers that graze there, be sure to visit the website, publiclandscouncil.org. Still to come on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll talk ticks and what NCBA is doing to educate producers about this potential threat.
Coming up shortly in this week's Weather Watch, we're going to be chatting about the rapid onset of drought happening in the Corn Belt over the next week or so, plus how this ties into the August forecast. That's straight ahead in this week's Weather Watch.
Cattle producers across the country work hard to care for their animals and their land. The USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service is there to help. Find out how you can work with NRCS to develop a conservation plan for your operation. Find possible funding resources for implementing conservation practices, or get free expert advice on ways to improve your farm or ranch. Visit the website nrcs.usda.gov today.
Stressors that trigger bovine respiratory disease are all around. So when you spot BRD in your herd, turn to Zuprevo, the fast that lasts. Zuprevo is rapidly absorbed in as little as 45 minutes and lasts up to 28 days. Because in the race against BRD, you need to win. Ready, set, Zuprevo. In case of human injection, seek immediate medical advice. For use in beef and non-lactating dairy cattle only. For prescribing information, talk to your veterinarian or visit Zuprevo.com.
Time now for Weather Watch with meteorologist Matt Makins.
Welcome to another Weather Watch. I'm meteorologist Matt Makins. Let's break down what's been happening so far in July. The monsoon, as we talked about on the last couple of C2C episodes about how the monsoon will be a little bit more break-even in July. That certainly was the case. So here's total precip for the month of July and some areas of surplus, also some deficits there around the Four Corners region with the monsoon. Very dry for the west, namely California, into the Great Basin. Southern Plains down through Texas, very, very dry as well. Upper Midwest was drier than average, and Iowa largely drier than average. This is different than what we had in June. with the surplus so strong in the Four Corners region. Let's look at the summer total, not just July, not just June, but the entire summer precip, and you start to see the surplus area there for the Southwest with the monsoon. Again, most of that came in June, a little bit more on the average scale, if you will, for July. But in total, still dealing with a surplus this summer for the Southwest. Now we start to bring in the moisture from the Northwest. Had a very wet June, but obviously got drier in July. Sadly, still very dry from California to the Great Basin. We also have the Southern Plains from Texas on up into Oklahoma, around the Flint Hills of Kansas. Mostly drier than average, some pockets of wetness. Upper Midwest into the Corn Belt, mostly the central and western Corn Belt, drier than average so far this summer. This is not unlike what we've chatted about with some of the long-term outlooks here on C2C. Let's talk about the outlook for the next week or so. There will be some hazards that need to be pointed out. The first of which is going to be extreme heat. This is going to be happening from the prairies of Canada all the way down to the south, close to the Boot Heel of Missouri. Within these plains, we're looking at well in excess of average temperatures. That, combined with a drier than average forecast, means that we may see the rapid expansion of drought. So during the next course of the week to 10 days or so, look for the Corn Belt, mostly the central areas, there throughout Iowa, parts of Kansas, Nebraska, into South Dakota and southern Minnesota. Look for rapid growth of the drought in these areas. So as the drought monitors come out over the next couple of weeks, you'll see those drought numbers increasing in that area. Otherwise, you flip the coin and there's heavy precipitation that'll be impacting the Southwest, still part of the monsoon. How does this tie in with August in total? August for moisture, we're looking at the Southwest, mostly Arizona, to have a bit of a surplus, but dry through the plains, stretching out to New England. So this pattern you see here for August, not much unlike what we've already experienced so far this summer. We'll see you next time on the Weather Watch.
We're in Reno, Nevada for the Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting, and I'm joined now by Dr. Kathy Simmons, who is the Chief Veterinarian at NCBA. Dr. Simmons, thanks for joining us. NCBA is fairly unique in having a Chief Veterinarian on staff. Tell me what your role is and what makes that special.
Well, thank you, Kate, for the opportunity to be here today. As the Chief Veterinarian for NCBA, I focus my energies towards protecting the health and well-being of the U.S. beef cattle herd and the safety and wholesomeness of the beef that we produce here in the United States. I work mainly with the regulatory agencies, the Food and Drug Administration, United States Department of Agriculture, and the Department of Homeland Security. And we work on a number of issues that are of concern to cattle producers in the United States. And some of them are veterinary drugs, antibiotics, antimicrobial resistance, foreign animal disease, brucellosis, and tuberculosis, just to name a few. I also work on international animal health and serve as a member to the U.S. delegations to the World Organization for Animal Health and the Codex Alimentarius. The World Organization for Animal Health sets standards for animal health, and Codex sets standards for food safety that apply to the World Trade Organization, so are very important organizations for us and for our producers.
That's a lot for one person to deal with. I'm always amazed at how all that work actually really does touch producers here in the U.S. So can you give us some examples then of how all that work really helps producers on their operations every day?
Well, I think our policies certainly are very important to producers, and all those policies are member-driven. And we use those policies to interact with the agencies and with Congress to make sure that our producers are on a level playing field to raise beef for the U.S. and for consumers abroad as well. We also have a robust producer education department that we work with and a beef quality assurance program that helps to ensure that our producers are educated on the latest in animal health and welfare.
So the Asian longhorn tick is an emerging issue and poses a potential threat to the cattle herd in the U.S. Talk about that.
The Asian longhorn tick is an invasive exotic tick that was first discovered in the United States on a sheep in New Jersey in 2017. We think it may have been in this country as early as 2010 by some of the tick archives that we have in the States. And this tick has the ability to carry diseases just like other ticks, but it's a little unique in its lifestyle. This tick is a three-host tick, which means that the larva, the nymph, and the adult all must drop to the environment and get on a new host, so environmental control is essential. This tick also has the ability to reproduce without a male. So a female can produce a population very rapidly. The tick has a number of diverse hosts. We've identified over 25 different hosts in the United States, including birds. So there's mobility with this tick as well. So the tick can carry, as I said, diseases that are of interest to people and to animals. With us in the cattle industry, the primary disease we're concerned about now that's carried by this Asian longhorn tick is Theileria orientalis akita genotype, which is a protozoan that can cause an infectious bovine anemia similar to anaplasmosis, but also can cause reproductive issues, abortions. These animals are unthrifty, and sometimes they even die. We currently have no approved therapy in the United States for Theileria, and we currently have no vaccine. So it is an emerging disease that we'd like to control through its insect vector, the Asian longhorn tick.
Yeah, so a lot to think about in terms of just whole productivity of cattle herds and potential loss of productivity. And NCBA is hosting a webinar along with USDA to give producers more information on this issue, correct?
We partnered with the United States Department of Agriculture, and NCBA and USDA are holding a virtual symposium or a webinar. It's a half day each day on August 23rd and August 24th. And we are going to cover a number of issues on that. We're going to cover tick identification. We're going to cover environmental control. We're going to cover other diseases besides the Asian longhorn tick, but we will focus primarily on that. So it'll be a little bit on cattle fever tick. And we are going to have USDA ARS give their latest research updates on the Asian longhorn tick, as well as having researchers give us updates on this theileriosis that the tick carries. And finally, we're going to have a panel of 5 state animal health authorities in the affected states that currently have this tick, talk about what they're doing in their state to manage this tick and what their concerns are. So it should be a very interesting and educational symposium for our members.
Well, thank you for all you do and being in DC and protecting the herd from all these issues, really. Thank you for knowing all the long scientific terms and what that means to producers, and thank you for sharing all that information with us. We'll look forward to that symposium.
That's right, and tell them they can register at our website, ncba.org, under the Producer Education tab, and I hope that we get a very large registration for this very informative webinar, and thanks for your time.
I guess as one last question, free of charge for this webinar?
It is free of charge.
Great, then there's no excuse not to be on this webinar to learn about this
And we're
issue.
hoping to record it, so if you can't be there in person, hopefully you can catch the recording.
Even better. Dr. Simmons, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Still ahead on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll see how John Deere equipment is helping a South Dakota cattle producer put up high quality hay. That story when we come back.
When you spot BRD in your cattle, that's your golden opportunity to target infection and its associated fever with a single dose of Resflor Gold, the industry standard dual therapy. To learn more, talk to your Merck Animal Health rep or your vet and see label at resflorgold.com. Animals intended for human consumption must not be slaughtered within 38 days of treatment. This product is not approved for use in female dairy cattle 20 months of age or older, including dry dairy cows.
The Asian longhorn tick is an invasive exotic pest in the United States threatening the cattle industry. These ticks are extremely small and can multiply fast, plus they carry diseases like Theileria that can pose a threat to your herd. That's why NCBA is hosting a 2-day virtual symposium with the U.S. Department of Agriculture on August 23rd and 24th, featuring veterinarians, state animal health officials, and industry experts. This event will help you identify these ticks and learn more about keeping your herd safe. Register today at ncba.org.
Welcome back. We're coming to you from the Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting in Reno, Nevada, but across the country, plenty of producers are still putting up hay. Getting your hay in on time is always a challenge for farmers and ranchers across the country. Cattlemen to Cattlemen reporter Brian Baxter has a look at how John Deere equipment is helping a South Dakota operation maximize its hay production by getting the job done quicker than ever before.
Ishmael Farms is a cow-calf and commercial hay operation located in South Dakota. Although John Ishmael started small, the business has grown steadily over the years.
I bought my first 32 head of bred heifers in December 1998 when I was a sophomore in high school, and helped Dad through the summer to help pay the feed bill in the wintertime. And got married in August of 2007. The wife moved up here from Bassett, Nebraska. We bought our first piece of land, and then we've just slowly added on since then.
Things are always busy around Ishmael Farms, but John knows one of the most important tasks is to make sure enough hay is cut, baled, and stored for winter feeding.
You never know how much hay you're going to need. I mean, a couple years ago, we had a bad blizzard at Thanksgiving, and we basically fed cattle all winter long. So, I mean, you never know how much you're going to need, but I mean, quality is everything. I mean, that's why you got to get it put up right and in a timely fashion. So it's better to have it, not need it, than need it, not have it.
John's learned over the years it's not just about the amount of hay, but the quality as well. Precipitation around harvest time has the potential to make or break a crop, and the window for cutting and baling hay is often very tight.
On a normal year, I mean, you hope for 3 cuttings of dry land, 4 cuttings irrigated, you know, I mean, but it all depends on Mother Nature. And sometimes you don't start till 10 o'clock at night. You might run till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning if the dew's right and the moisture's right, because time is money and everybody's out of time.
For years, the Ishmael family has relied on John Deere equipment to make haying easier and to control costs. Recently, John worked with Grossenberg Implement to purchase a new W235R self-propelled windrower for his family's operation.
We had a new John Deere 6 years ago, and we just thought, well, let's just update. You know, we didn't have any trouble with the other ones, but, you know, we cut a lot of hay. We'll cut 1,500 acres 3-4 times a year. So, I mean, it gets a lot of hours put on it. And they come out with a new model, so we were kind of excited about that and wanted to get one of the first ones.
Although the days can be long during harvest, the W235R's 6-cylinder engine can speed things up by powering through the toughest crops.
One machine, we can cut 15, 18 acres an hour, and, you know, in a day you can cut 1/4 to 200 acres a day. If you want to run 10, 12 miles an hour, if the field conditions are right, you can. One guy can do as much as 2 basically with this, you know. I mean, it's just, if the ground conditions are right, you know.
John says the cab offers great visibility and comfort, while the AutoTrack steering system gives him better accuracy and control.
I mean, at the end of the day, if you're going to sit in that thing for 10, 12 hours a day, the last thing you want to do is steer all day. I mean, it's just, you do a better job, you can look around and make sure you're not leaving a strip or something that isn't plugged up. I mean, or you might see some other problem, you know, before it's a big problem.
John believes time saved in the field with his John Deere windrower translates into faster cutting, faster dry down, and a quicker path to getting hay baled and in the barn. Having the right support team is important too, especially during hay season. John Deere equipment is backed by a strong dealer network, which provides the service needed to keep equipment up and running.
It's not unheard of to get calls at 10, 11 o'clock at night for people broke down during haying season, that a belt on a windrower went out or something happened on the baler. So we have parts on hand, we have mobile technicians, we have trucks floating around to keep customers going and try to offer the best service that we possibly can.
They got after hours parts that you can call if you need a hose or something at 10 o'clock at night. Somebody will go make you one. I mean, if you got to keep rolling. So, and on Sundays, they'll open up and get you some. There's always going to be some little thing that's going to happen, and you just gotta be able to keep going.
John Deere offers haymaking equipment with a wide variety of features, sizes, and horsepower to fit any cattle operation.
I think a big thing with John Deere and the haymaking is they've been in the business for a long time. They've made good products, quality products for several years, whether you're looking for an economy level to a mid-spec level to a very quality premium level. We have multiple different hay lines that offer different price points and stuff, because not everyone farms 20,000 acres or cuts 10,000 acres of hay. We need to have products for everybody, and John Deere's done a good job of providing those products.
And at Ishmael Farms, they count on their John Deere equipment to keep their operation going strong for today and for the future.
I mean, that's why you're out here doing what we do, is to pass it on to the next generation. You know, we have 5 kids, and each one of them, they've started acquiring cows, and they get pretty excited about going out and tagging their calves. It's just trying to keep them all involved. Hopefully they come back, you know. I mean, I think it's a great lifestyle.
Reporting from South Dakota, I'm Brian Baxter for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
If you'd like to learn more about how hay equipment from John Deere can bring value to your farm or ranch, visit your local dealership or check out the website johndeere.com. Still to come, we'll introduce you to the 2021 national winner of the Environmental Stewardship Award. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi everybody, I'm Tom Elliott with John Deere.
This beef quality assurance tip is funded by the Beef Checkoff.
Hi, Jolie Fitzsimons here to talk to you today about the Beef Quality Assurance Program and our online BQA modules. If you've been certified online before, you can now go back and look up your certificate or get recertified online. Go to bqa.org under the certification tab to get logged in. Don't worry if you forgot your password. You can reset it on the site or reach out to customer support for assistance. If you've never been certified before, we'd love for you to head to bqa.org today and get signed up.
The Beef Quality Assurance Program is funded by the Beef Checkoff.
If you're looking for the best in cattle industry news, information, and education, then don't miss NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Each week we cover important topics such as herd health and cattle handling, plus updates with congressional and industry leaders about today's top policy issues, and stories shot on location at cattle farms and ranches around the country. Don't miss NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen on RFD TV and on YouTube.
There is a lot happening at this year's Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting, including the announcement of the 2021 national winner of the Environmental Stewardship Award program. Here's Cattlemen to Cattlemen reporter Russell Nimitz with more.
Thank you, Kate, and congratulations to Utah's J.Y. Ferry & Son, the National Environmental Stewardship Award winner. And they join us on Cattlemen to Cattlemen today. And John, let's start with you. Talk about what type of emotions are running through you and your family here on the national stage, just being named this year's National ESAP winner.
This is a culmination of a lot of wonderful things, because I'm thinking of my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather who came here, and the hard work and the vision that they gave us. There's a saying that if I have seen further, it's because I stand on the shoulder of giants. And so it's their day for them to, and we're just their boys carrying on the tradition. All we know is what we've been taught. So it's a special day for the family.
Absolutely. Let's turn to Ben now and talk a little bit about the operation there in Utah. You're going to talk about the farming side, and then we're going to come back to John and talk about the cattle side. But talk about some of the conservation and stewardship practices on the farming side that you folks are implementing there in Utah.
I think to be able to understand and appreciate what we do, we're very diversified. We have the ranch, we have a feed yard, and we have a farm. And the farm supports the feed yard and the ranch at the same time. In order to be able to work with the resources we have, you have to be able to understand what the land will produce and to be responsible on how you do it. But water is critical in everything we do. We've laid almost 88,000 feet of pipe trying to preserve the water and to get it to where it's supposed to be, when it's supposed to be there, and laser leveling. We do strip tilling, we do no-till, we do everything possible to minimize costs, but preserve the land.
That's an incredible feat in itself. Now let's talk about the livestock side of your operation.
We're unique in that we graze in the dry land where water is short supply, and so rotational grazing and also timely grazing on the season is so critical. And then we're out in the wetlands, we're in the swamps and the bogs. And so we look at what is available there, and we say, as we listen to the land, this is what we can do, and this is what we can't do. And so we find the resources, the business model to put upon the land, because the land is our greatest resource, and we need to take care of it. For if we do so, the land will take care of us.
Well said. Let's wrap things up. A lot of folks watching sometimes think that they could never apply for an award like this. They could never become a regional winner like yourself and then go on to win the national award. What advice do you have for other cattlemen and cattlewomen across America when it comes to implementing and applying for the Environmental Stewardship Award and being recognized for the very things that they're doing every single day?
I think every family has a story to tell, and every family is unique. What you've done to preserve your land and the story you have to tell is the basis of your application. This is an award to recognize the stewardship of everybody here, everybody who works the land. So everybody can apply. Just tell your story. Our story started out in 1901. And so it's a story we're proud of, but everyone and anyone can apply. Just tell your story of your love of the land, and it will come out in such a way that you'll be proud of yourself, and they will be proud to associate with you and compare their operation with your operation and see that there's not much difference.
Well, again, congratulations to you and your families there in Utah. Again, the National Environmental Stewardship Award winner from Utah. Let's learn more about the J.Y. Ferry and Son operation in Utah.
J.Y. Ferry and Son is a family-owned ranch located on the Bear River Delta in Utah. The Ferries have been living and working on this land for more than a century.
My great-grandfather immigrated here right after the railroad at the turn of the century. We're a family operation. I'm fourth generation. I operate on our ranch with my brother, and I have a son who's coming along on the fifth generation.
We are standing on the shoulders of our ancestors that came out here over 120 years ago. We take it serious, the responsibility we have for the legacy of their past and for the future of this operation.
Water has been a critical factor in the long-term success of J.Y. Ferry and Son. The Ferries consider the Bear River the heart of their operation, since it provides irrigation water for crops and stock water for cattle.
Where we're located is the very end of the Bear River, where it deltas out, right where it enters into the Great Salt Lake. And so we have this water resource that's really unique. It creates this oasis in the desert. And so we have to be mindful of that and make sure that we are practicing conservation 365 days out of the year, 24/7, because we capture the water, make use of it before it goes into the Great Salt Lake.
Over the years, the Ferry family has removed invasive species along the Bear River and fenced their cattle away from sensitive riparian areas. They also relocated a feed yard that used to be next to the river.
It turned out to be a really good opportunity for us to kind of get a new, updated feed yard, as well as moving an operation that could potentially have some conflict with the environment into an area that was more stable. We tore it down. We tore out the cement and relocated that to a more conducive place as far as the feedlot operation is concerned, and also the environment. And right now, where it used to be cattle, it's now pumpkins, for a pumpkin patch.
A majority of the range used by the Ferry family for grazing is considered wetlands. Historically, grazing wetlands has been viewed in a negative light. But through years of careful hard work, the Ferries have demonstrated benefits to the practice. The biggest was when they discovered one of Utah's most noxious and invasive weeds is actually quite palatable to cattle.
Our cow herd is wetland based, And the vegetation that's in the wetland is varied, but the one that's a challenge is a species called Phragmites. Phragmites is an invasive weed. And the reason it's invasive because you cannot naturally control it. Historically, Phragmites has been controlled by herbicide, by spraying it to kill it. But we've discovered in our own operation that we can control Phragmites by grazing it.
For when you spray it, you kill everything. When you burn it, you kill everything. When you drought it, you kill everything. And we have been places where they haven't had cattle ever, and it is just a thick jungle mess of Phragmites. You can't walk through it. There's no habitat whatsoever for anything, for any birds, any ducks or geese or anything. And that's where we come in, because you have cattle that are trained, recognize what the plant is. They will graze on it, select it out, and all of a sudden you are turning a disaster into a grazing opportunity.
It pushes the birds out and the wildlife species that would traditionally use these wetland areas. And so by grazing it, what you do is you're pushing back, you're preventing it from spreading. And what we've been able to show is that done the right way, proper management of cattle in these wetland areas actually improves the wetlands. And so the cattle are a very important tool that we use.
Federal and state agencies have also caught on to the benefits of grazing wetlands. And for the past several years, the ferries have run some of their cattle on public lands.
We graze on U.S. wetlands managed by the Department of Fish and Wildlife Service, and we're able to control and maintain and hold back the spreading of the Phragmites. And the end result is you have a multiple use benefit for cattle, and you have much greater ducks and geese and shorebirds because they have an open supply of nesting areas and so forth.
We're benefiting other producers as well by showing how we can turn something that's a problem for the state or problem for government agencies and benefit our industry. And really, I think that's a huge success story. There are literally thousands of cattle now in the valley grazing on Phragmites every summer on these different areas.
Without the cows, we couldn't accomplish our Phragmites control objectives. So it's a super important tool that we have in the toolbox. And without grazing, without the ferry family, I think we would not be doing as well.
The sustainable practices the ferries are using today are helping to ensure that future generations will be able to work this land and protect its natural beauty.
Sustainability to me means managing the resource in such a way that it's here for generations. My kids and my grandkids can continue to farm and ranch and enjoy this beautiful area the way I do.
As we think about the improvements that we've made, I don't think that previous generations would even recognize it. And I think that our efforts would be looked on with great pleasure.
Every day I'm out on this place, I look at it and say, this is what my grandfather started. What am I doing with it? Because I feel there's going to be an accountability. And I need to be able to proudly say that I did the best I could, took what was here, improved upon it, and passed it on.
If you'd like to find out more about the Environmental Stewardship Award winners, see photos and videos, or even learn how to nominate someone for the award, visit the website environmentalstewardship.org. Stay with us. We'll be back to wrap up this special episode of Cattlemen to Cattlemen right after this.
Weeds will rob me of my investments. The weeds are not palatable to cows. They will not eat them, or if they do eat them, some of them may be toxic. So there's a return on investment by allowing there to be more grass available to be grazed by the cattle.
Cattlemen and women are dedicated to managing their land and cattle in a sustainable way. They want to leave a legacy for future generations. For more than 30 years, the Environmental Stewardship Award has worked to honor these caretakers of the land and to share their stories. To find out more and to learn how you can nominate a farm or ranch for the Environmental Stewardship Award, visit the website environmentalstewardship.org. you have an upcoming production sale to advertise? Then contact the Cattlemen to Cattlemen marketing team or your breed association to learn more.
Welcome back. Each year, the Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA trade show is one of the highlights for thousands of cattlemen and women around the country. It's not too early to start making your plans to attend next year's event. The event is coming to New Orleans, Louisiana, February 1st through the 3rd, 2023. Find out all the details on the beef industry's premier event at the website, convention.ncba.org. Do you need to rewatch an episode of Cattlemen to Cattlemen and catch up on anything you've missed? Then visit our YouTube page. You'll find replays of all our shows filled with educational segments and producer profiles from around the country. So check us out on YouTube. We're wrapping up this week's show with legacy photos. These are great pictures submitted by our viewers of their daily life on the farm or ranch. Let's take a look. We'd like to see your picture on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, and you can submit your picture a couple of ways. Message them to us on the Cattlemen to Cattlemen Facebook page or email them to c2c@beef.org. Send them our way and we may use them on a future episode. Well, that wraps up this edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Thanks so much for spending some of your time with us. And we'll see you again next week right here on RFD TV.